Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Ohana Software, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's webinar. We're going to be talking about newspapers tonight with Thomas J. Kemp from Genealogy Bank, and we're grateful to have him join us. We do have a few housekeeping things to take care of at the beginning, so I would like to go through that at this particular time. If you'll stay tuned and stay through the whole webinar, you will be informed of a special offer that we're going to have. So now it's time to turn the microphone and the screen to Tom.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Thank you, Sina. Sina and I were talking earlier. It's just a marvel that she's in one end of the country and I'm in the other, and all of you listening are spread probably in between. Do take the time. If you have a question, type it in there. Sina will ask. Let's make this effective for you as well as for me. And you can contact me at Genealogy Bank at any time. I'd be happy to answer your questions, perhaps on any phase of genealogy, but especially with the newspapers. But truly, if you have any questions, anything you've been stumped on, feel free to write us, and we'll see if we can't help you. I think newspapers are terrific. This is a great opportunity for us as genealogists. I've been at this probably just almost 50 years now. Many of you have been doing this for decades, and newspapers have been sort of the untouched resource for genealogists. They were just simply too difficult for genealogists to get into, too inaccessible. Libraries did not acquire in bulk microfilm of newspapers from all around the country. They would perhaps collect for their area. So it required a lot of travel by genealogists to get to them. And now having them only over the last 5-6 years available online, it's just an incredible day. I am speaking on behalf of Genealogy Bank, which is the largest provider of online newspapers today. It's very exciting. There's over 6,500 newspapers up at this point, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. We probably put up 20 million, give or take, new records every single month. And people ask, how about my state? How about my state? How about this paper? We update and expand the coverage of over 3,000 newspapers every single day. So your state is absolutely being covered every single day. We'll publish a list each month of what's been added, but we'll only scoop out maybe 100, 150 of the titles that we've added content to, because when you're adding to 3,000 newspapers, literally every single day, we couldn't possibly list every paper and every single item that's been added, but it gives you a good flavor of the variety of what's available. So newspapers. Well, a little bit more chit-chat about Genealogy Bank. It does cover all 50 states. It's up to 1.3 billion records at this point. There are several buckets or sections in Genealogy Bank, and there's over 400,000 rare books and documents there. All of that boils down to hundreds of millions of names and over 200 million obituaries, which people do tend to focus on.
Tom, we already have two questions. One is, will Genealogy Bank get more Canadian newspaper content?
The operative there is more. We don't have Canadian newspapers. Everything in Genealogy Bank is U.S. published newspapers. Now that said, if you go along the border of the country, just as it is with neighboring states, newspapers want to appeal to their market. And just because they're published in the United States, their market is also readers across the border. And so you'll find that up in Maine and Michigan, different areas, it's very clear that the newspaper routinely included obituaries, marriages, and the like for Canadians as well as the U.S. population. But in terms of having Canadian newspapers, we do not. It's only U.S. content. And you said there
Okay.
was 2 questions. What was the other?
Yes, the other one has to do with papersofrecord.org, which was bought by Google, and Valerie would like to know where they can find that.
You know, I look for that from time to time. I'm not seeing that they ever put it up again once it was taken down, but I'm confident that it hasn't been lost, so to speak, and I would be happy, Valerie, to look for that again after the lecture and see if I can help you track it down. So if you want to send me by way of Sina your contact information, she can give that to me after the program, and I'd be happy to track that down for you. So go ahead, do continue to send in the questions as you have them. And but newspapers are so critical right now. And what I really want you to consider as you look at the paper is that you read all of it. That when you grab an obituary or you grab a marriage notice, that you take the time, just make a plan that you'll read through that day's newspaper. And make that part of what you do, and you can easily flip in Genealogy Bank. Just use the features that we have on the site and flip through the day's paper once you have the obituary, once you have the marriage notice. See what life was like the day your ancestors were born, when they died, or when they got married. One of the great things about the old newspapers is that it does contain what happened every day of our ancestors' lives. We have the papers going back to the 1600s, and you just find some fantastic articles. And I always wonder, is this a story? Is this part of a family's heritage? Do they still remember the story? Has it been passed down? And if not, people are gathering these nuggets now like never before. And I thought this was the most spectacular obituary that I'd seen in a long, long while. This was for the widow, Hannah Lyman, and her maiden name was Clark. And it talks about when she was born. Obituaries are great for giving these details. And but the key item here was she remembered the great earthquake of 1755. She talks about how it gripped them, how the family was terrified, how the mom said, you know, we must look to God. I mean, there's just, there's nothing I can do to save you children. I mean, it must have been a terrifying thing, just like you hear earthquakes today. And here's one from the 1750s. I just think that is terrific. And if a family were to have that, that's just a little touch with their family. Goes beyond the names, dates, and places. It gives you really some of the fabric of the life of the family. That story was no doubt told and retold. It was such a gripping story that in her obituary, her friends and neighbors included it because it just probably left them spellbound that she could remember that, and she would tell that story from when she was a little girl. And that's the kind of thing I love, when people find that in the newspapers and they can incorporate that so it never will be lost again, that the family will have it, record it, and pass it down. Interesting stories. This is an article from 1922 from a Kentucky newspaper talking about an event in Texas where 2 sisters, twins, one had married a Union soldier, one had married a Confederate, and they feuded all their lives, and here they buried the hatchet finally in 1922, long after the Civil War, and they had lived together all that time. So that must have been an interesting household and an interesting dynamic. But to have that story, who knows how the memory of that feud was passed down, or even if it was, but here was something to pass down. And you get families that get to be grumpy, and different sides don't talk to each other. And here was some that didn't talk to each other, weren't civil to each other, and yet after all those decades. And it's a very lengthy article. What a terrific find. You can find some other, incredible stories. Here's one about Henry Hubbard, who was so aggrieved in 1831 that his leaf had been stolen that he took out a notice in the Stamford, Connecticut newspaper wanting somebody to return his leaf or action would be taken. I mean, that's got to be news of the weird in my book, but you never know. And here's, so it'd be interesting to investigate that. What's so compelling about a leaf from his garden? I don't know. But there's other stories you can get. Here's an article about a family, and it's highlighted because these multi-generations were related to a Mayflower passenger, in this case Peregrine White. And this article appeared when those two little kids they were holding were just born. And if you track them down further in Genealogy Bank, you can find their obituaries decades later. And so it's interesting as you track the family over the generations, you get their baby pictures, their parents, grandparents, grandmother, I guess that is, and see the relationship. And it's interesting to see as you weave together the generations of the family. And all of this was an article because they had gotten together for Thanksgiving and the Mayflower and all touching together. But I find it interesting that decades later there's their obituaries, and if you check further in Genealogy Bank, you see there's Peregrine White's obituary back in 1704. So here you have the first European, if you will, born in America, and yet his obituary born in 1620 on the Mayflower in the harbor, and here's his obituary that many years later. So Genealogy Bank really spans the centuries. And as you start to get acquainted with the papers, as you dig into it, you realize you are going to have to start to become accustomed to the way newspapers appeared, to the syntax of the day, to the fonts and the styles, the spelling. And so you get right off from the very first word, and this would be terrific, I think, for incorporating the kids and the rising generation to get them involved. Have them be detectives here. You're only going to get their attention for just so long, I'll grant you, but they might do it for just one obituary or something. And some might be captivated. We might have a new crop of genealogy growing. But you see here the first word, Marshfield. And if you're just new at this, that might take a little leap to figure that out. But the preceding S is rendered as a character that looks more like an F in the old days. July 22nd, Captain Peregrine White of this town, which likely refers to Boston where the newspaper was published, but it could be Marshfield, so you'd have to investigate that. Aged 83 and 8 months, that's handy for the genealogist, but of course we know when he was born, and died the 10th instant. And in this case, this is older language, no longer the way they refer to it, but the 20th instant would refer to the most recent occurrence of the 20th. And since this was a newsletter published on a weekly basis, and so they gave it a rolling date of July 24th to the 31st, we'd know that was July 20th. He was vigorous, and it described him and went on and on. And mindful of religion in those days, it said, although he was in the former part of his life extravagant, no, we can't have that, yet was much reformed in his last years, again with that S and looking more like an F, and died hopefully. And so in a religious sense, hopeful of the eternities, etc. So good for him. And so here you have a family, and if you have that Mayflower connection, for example, in this case, bang, you get Peregrine. Oh, you get these distant cousins and those grandchildren, the parents, you get multi-generations, bang, 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 and all of this is easy to pull out of Genealogy Bank and from newspapers. That's why newspapers are so compelling in my book for the genealogists today. You're really going to fill in the details. And let's just see how that works. There's an example here in Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York, James and Ann Ayers, and they're listed in the census. And right away, if you look in the 1850 census, and you see this over and over, they have an 8-year-old child, a 6-year-old child, and a 1-year-old child, and then you immediately say, something's wrong here. There's a gap. It's just so compelling and so likely that there would have been another child. And so by looking in the newspaper for that period, say the mid to late 1840s, you might want to check and see if there had been a child born and if there had been a child that passed away. And of course, the census at that point is not going to name them. You'd have to go to alternative sources. Newspapers are a terrific outlet. And there we find here that there was a child, Lavina, and on the 28th ultimate, meaning, of course, this was published on published in December, and so we know the 28th ultimate would have been the 28th of November, 1848. Short illness, 3 days. Youngest daughter of James and Anne died and gave her age in years, months, and days, which they really like to do in the 19th century. So very helpful. It helps us to plug right in her date of birth and to compute that back. So a terrific source. It's not independent. You can use it in conjunction with all the other resources you're using, as in this example with the census. Nice that it tells us the precise town that they're living in. So there's very, very helpful.
Tom, we have a few more questions that have come in, not necessarily on this topic, but I want to get to them before we go much further. Back to the question about Canadian papers, Liam Park wanted to know if you were considering doing any Canadian papers in the future.
Well, at this point, we're not. Our parent company, Newsbank, of course, does newspapers from all over the world, the Far East, Europe, South Latin America, Canada, the UK, and so that is something that's been worked on for many years, and but I can say that at this point there's no immediate plans to add content beyond the US.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question about Irish Americans living in the United States. Gary wants to know, where do I need to look to get information about these Irish Americans, and is there a specific paper that he should look for?
Yes, Gary, you'll find that there are quite a few Irish Americans among us. My family comes from Ireland as well, on multiple counties. And the wonderful thing about Genealogy Bank is you could zero in on specific newspapers, or you can search all of Genealogy Bank, and you search with your surname. And I'm going to show you multiple examples here, particularly Irish focused, that'll show you that the newspapers pick up where in Ireland a person is from. And that is very difficult to come by, because so often it will simply say born Ireland. But if you get an Irish American newspaper, of which we have a good dozen plus, Shamrock in New York, Irish Nation, Irish World, etc., and they're published in multiple cities, not just New York. There's some from out west, and so all across the country. And Irish Americans, just like the Jewish papers or the German papers, people who are interested in that in the homeland, or they were interested in a newspaper that spoke their language, so to speak, they would subscribe to those papers even though they were from other states and other areas. And so this would be a good thing to focus in on. I'm going to show you a little section a little later with Irish passenger lists that a newspaper from New York City called the Irish Nation routinely published Irish marriages, Irish deaths, Irish passenger lists. They literally captured every person that got off the ship, asked them if they were Irish, and they included the person's name, age, where in Ireland they came from, and where in the U.S. they were going. That information is not in the passenger lists. So I think it's terrific that here's a source. How in the world they would get 7, 10, 18 ships a day and find them and find the Irish passengers on those ships, interview them, and get that information is beyond me. But they also did the same thing for births, not for births, but for marriages and deaths in Ireland. and you'll see pages that are like dense telephone books, column after column of deaths in Ireland. And because they're so difficult to read, as you would just go down the page and try to read it, the nice thing is with Genealogy Bank, it's all indexed. And so you pull in the name, or you can pull in the town. You've got to be careful there. Is it the actual town, like Corradownin in my family's case, or is it the name of the county, Fermanagh or Cavan or Limerick or whatever it happens to be? And so you could zero in using multiple searches, but it's there. And that's stunning, because with Irish civil registration not beginning until about 1864, earlier for the marriages, Protestant marriages, I understand, and there are the church registers, but in general, the civil registration is not beginning until 1864. You got the newspapers that are going much earlier than that, 10, 20 years earlier. So here's a terrific source. How they got the people to send this information, I'm not sure, but they did, and it worked, and we have it. It's just a wonderful thing.
That's great. The questions keep flooding in, and I know that we need to keep working. Let me just give you a view of some of the questions, and maybe you can answer a few of them just kind of real quickly. One of them, just as a comment, Genealogy Bank also has Irish American Weekly. Somebody wants to know how they can access Newsbank.
Well, this is how you access Newsbank. You're getting it through Genealogy Bank. All the newspapers that are in Newsbank, all the U.S. newspapers are in Genealogy Bank. And the rest, if what they're really saying is how do I get those international papers, they'll need to visit they'll need to get the library in their area and see if they're participating with Newsbank or our division called Redex to get those international papers.
Okay, so they're going to come through the library then.
In their area, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can anybody suggest a newspaper that they would like Genealogy Bank to work on getting?
Yes.
Can they send in suggestions?
Yes, please, yes. And they can do that on our Facebook page. They can do that on our blog. They can do that by simply sending in an email. And on every page in Genealogy Bank, you'll see a screen there, a feature on the page. If you look, send in feedback and that sort of thing. Ping it and send it in, or you can send it to me. Squeaky wheels do get the grease, but let's just say you sent in a terrific suggestion and everybody agreed and said, wow, we ought to get the XYZ newspaper. That process can take years. And there are 6,500 newspapers live on our site today. There's at least 6,000 newspapers in production to be added. And you do see literally every month more titles have been added that are new. And so these things take time. Once we've decided to get a paper, we have to track down the issues, who's got them. You may say, I know where they are, they're over here. And so we contact the people over there, and sure enough, they've got a lot of them, but they don't have all of them. And maybe the newspaper itself said, oh, well, there was the flood, there was the fire, or, you know, we just weren't that interested in keeping them, and so they've got an erratic, incomplete collection. We try to get it as complete as possible. And we'll keep digging. We'll find the archives. We'll contact other libraries. We'll go to likely sources. And then if the copies aren't good enough, we have to go find better copies. At the end of the day, we'll go with it and put it up. And that's why every single day we're adding and filling in. Better that we got up some of it. And yeah, we know June was missing for whatever reason, and we're still looking for June 1852 or whatever. But as they find those issues or they find better issues, they'll plug them in. And that's how it works. Now, sometimes the publishers agree and say, okay, we'll let you publish it. And but we always go through the front door. We always work directly with a publisher or the owner of the content, and don't surprise them by just all of a sudden putting it online. So all the agreements have to be worked out. We may be very, very willing, but if they aren't, it may take a while. Or if it's not practical or realistic to track down the copies, we haven't found them, then it'll just have to wait. And we have newspapers in multiple languages, English, German, Spanish. We have the largest collection of Spanish language American newspapers, largest collection of African American newspapers, and Irish American, German American. It just goes on and on. Italian, a nice collection of Italians coming online. Various groups, ethnic groups, various languages. So there's a lot of different specialty newspapers as well as mass market general newspapers. Big cities, small towns, real wide selection across all 50 states. One of the popular features in newspapers are the birth announcements, births, marriages, and deaths. And you can see they come in all flavors here. There are the regular columns that appeared with birth records, but they also appeared in some newspapers as part of the classified ads. So you'll want to be flexible in how you attack a newspaper, and that's why you want to use the index to dig in and get the information. I think somebody, go ahead, Sina.
We've had a few comments. We've still got lots of questions coming in, but we have had a few comments that people would like us to get back on track, so maybe we need to put the comments to the side. Can they send emails to genealogybank.com about some of their specific questions that they have?
Yes.
Okay. So if people are sending in questions to me that are just something that they need to know about for their family, they should send an email to what?
GB support. At genealogybank.com. And what you'll do, I do encourage all the questions because they are totally appropriate, but let's forge ahead. And somebody seems to have an open mic because I can hear somebody typing there too. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn it off.
I guess that means it's off. Okay, so we have the birth announcements, and typical to a birth announcement, you can get a lot of detail, and they vary from paper to paper. In this 1999 article from South Dakota, it gave not only the parents but the grandparents, and a lot of the details. Terrific when you can find this sort of thing. You get some that give details based on what was happening at the time. Somebody was away with the Army. So-and-so was the former Miss Rhea Holtzberg, a teacher in the Butler City School, so they very much personalize it. It's wonderful in the local paper where they will give you the details that you just wouldn't find otherwise. You also get sort of the quick lists. Cradle rolls can be produced by churches. They're produced by the town and county clerks. And so you're going to look for the format that was consistent in the paper in your area. And once you latch on to it, keep it in mind. Also remember these things tend to appear, especially the birth listings, at certain times of the month or in certain pages. It's also as common in some newspapers not to publish birth announcements, but to publish a picture of the child when they were 1 year old, 2 years old. In this case, these kids range from 2 and 3 and 4 years old, and but it's also special, and you know the family would have clipped and saved this, passed it around copies, and so some cases you get multiple children in a picture like the middle one here. And here's an example from the Dallas Morning News where people would take it out as a classified ad, and people also would take out little happy birthday announcements that they'd put in the paper as ads. Newspapers were able to make that popular as well. And so people have a lot of fun with it, so you can find these. I do not want you to overlook classified ads. Marriages, engagements, all things wedding. These people love to celebrate these and get the announcements out there, and they did. And these were picked up by other newspapers as the word got around. Everybody wanted to celebrate the good news. And you'd get the names of the bride and groom, location of the church, potential date of the wedding, where the couple planned to live, who are the parents, biographical information, members of the wedding party, hopefully even pictures. It just depends on the time and the era. And these could range from etchings or actual photographs. Another interesting thing is newspapers would report on marriages, births, and deaths far away from their market. because the editor wanted to sell those papers, and he wanted to reach out. Now here you have one in Brattleboro, Vermont, and you can picture that they're looking to reach over to New Hampshire, down to Massachusetts, over to New York, and that's just what you see in this first set of 3 marriages here. The first one was a marriage at Hinsdale, New Hampshire. And it tells you in the 17th instant, again referring back, so that would have been the 17th of June in 1834, who did it, who was getting married. And so here you have this Edwin G. Ripley of Hartford. Notice the spelling of Connecticut, C-O-N period. So if you've ever set type, which I used to do as a kid, you know you could run out of letters, and they could just as easily have used an upside down U or something to make the Connecticut, so it would visually appeal to the reader, but in this case they just shortened it, and you do find that a lot, and so they're very flexible in how they abbreviated things. And he was from Connecticut, she was from Hinsdale, but the marriage announcement was appearing in a Brattleboro, Vermont newspaper. So the wise editor knows that by including information from farther afield, so if people say they were married in New Hampshire, I know they were married in New Hampshire, I only want a New Hampshire newspaper, you're going to miss this wedding announcement. And so you've got to be flexible. Same with the next one, Shutesbury, down in Massachusetts, where the Deacon Oliver Dutton, let's see, I guess he was from Ludlow, which would have been Vermont, but there's Ludlows, like there are so many New England towns in multiple states. He was age 73 to Phoebe Power of Shutesbury, who was 70, on the day of marriage. So that's pretty cool. She got married on her birthday. And so little clues if we read it carefully. And then you want to double check to make sure that's really what was intended by that. But it sure sounds like it to me. And the last one, Albany, is New York. Joel Munsell, printer, and to Miss Bigelow. No idea where she's from. Perhaps she's from Vermont, but he's definitely from Albany, which is New York. And so you are getting marriages and events from farther out. No indication directly that there was anybody there perhaps except the Deacon Oliver, who's from Ludlow, which is probably just up the road from Brattleboro. Then you have the Eastern Argus, a Maine newspaper, Portland, 1828, page 3, and you get multiple marriages here. So you see this editor is pulling in from all over the state of Maine. In this town, okay, that'd be Portland, and the next one's in Falmouth, and the next one's in Gray, and Wyndham, Vassalboro, China, Maine, Sydney, Maine, Deer Isle, and so they're really appealing to people all across. As long as my cursor's down here, notice this first name, Mr. Admiral Sawyer. That's his first name, was Admiral. I looked it up because I thought, oh, we got an admiral here, but it's not. That was his first name. So you're going to have to be very flexible. What may appear to be a title might not be. And so then you go, the first marriage, oh, it was on Thursday evening. Hey, when was that? And so you can go to your perpetual calendar. You get one for 1828. You know the newspaper was published on the 19th, so you flip back to Thursday, it's the 14th. And so you quickly find out that on Thursday evening last, so that was the 14th, you now have a date. I hear a little Twitter in the background. Does that mean you have another question, Sina?
We do have several questions. I'm going to limit it to just a couple. One, we do have several people that would like to know how you can actually do these searches, but the one question that was asked, if I can find it again, was will the index catch all these listings, or do you need to just peruse through the individual papers?
All of the above. The indexing captures every single word in the newspaper, every single word, and it's done by OCR by computer. And so if you look at the old newspapers, some of them are made on handmade newspaper with hand-carved fonts, and so it can be very rough, very tough for a computer to see it. Some are modern newspapers, and we receive the computer feed, so there is no intervention It is the same exact computer feed that was sent to the printer, and in fact we handle it for newspapers. The parent company called Newsbank. We do service the newspaper industry, and we serve them by taking those feeds and creating what appears to be the online newspaper that with flippable pages, because that's a service that newspaper needed. And so that same exact feed, but then if you range back into the 1828, for example, you can see there's a certain roughness about the page. So that may cause things to be a little glitchy along the way in an index, but just like an index in the back of a land record or the probate register or vital records, you have to be flexible for the handwriting. Can you read that handwriting? Can you see it now the way they saw it then? Did you understand their indexes or their abbreviations? And so you're going to attack a newspaper index, Genealogy Bank, just like you would any handwritten or typed index. And I'm going to show you some techniques as we push forward here where you're going to be searching and some strategies. So let's keep forging ahead. I think we'll answer some of those questions as we go along.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I want to point out to you that you want to read everything in the paper. Notice the clues. And so here you have a marriage, and they refer to them as being the second daughter of, or the youngest daughter of, the late. And so you get a lot of clues there. I remember having a wedding announcement for my family, and it was years later that I went back through and reread it, and I was going through the list of attendees, and all the Kemps were listed one after another, and then I looked at the last name, and I said, Florence. Who's Florence Kemp? And of course that was a clue to leap off that these were people from New York City and they had come up. But fortunately they had attended the wedding, and so it was a good step forward. Here you have a wedding in Baltimore, reported in the Baltimore paper, let's see, the Philadelphia paper, but they're from Cumberland County, Maryland, which is out where Camp David is, out at the extreme western end of Maryland. So you have Garrett County and Amos Broadwater. And if you notice, he was at the ripe old age of 91, and his bride was 55. And so it does give the names and the residences, when they were married, where. Talks about his first wife having died 14 months ago. They'd been married 63 years. They had only death in the family. Gave you the number of children, grandchildren, how many were still living, that sort of thing, 102 great-grandchildren, and on and on. And so it's great stuff, packed into just 2 paragraphs. And interesting to point out that if you look in the 1880 census, there is Amos and his good wife, Sarah. And by the time you look at the 1900 census, here is the children. Here is Amos again, the father, listed as a widower, and gave his birth date. So if you did not know that he got married in 1895, you might think that he was a widower because Sarah had died, but he had lost his other wife. And so you need to piece together all the facts, and it's just wonderful how newspapers can do that. Not only when they got married, but they're celebrating their many anniversaries. My parents just celebrated their 68th wedding anniversary. So it's just astonishing what's accomplished in the long lives of people. But not every marriage turns out to be happiness, and divorce, which by popular belief is clocking in around 50%, is actually clocking in somewhere around 10 to 15%. But it's a common myth out there that half of all marriages end in divorce. That's not true. So it's one of those little, you can be a myth buster. And but there's lots of divorces. And another myth was there wasn't divorces in the old days. There are plenty of divorces. It may have been more difficult to get them, but people did get a divorce. And so you will find divorces early on. Here's one in 1751, and another one in 1862. And so these things are filed routinely, and you can get the details. And so you do want to check for everything. In this case, they're listed with the legal notices. So it might be something you might have passed over, thinking that legal notices just involved criminals or what have you, maybe probates. but it is more than that. And I do like to point out, we referenced earlier from an earlier question, there are all types of specialty newspapers, in this case Jewish newspapers, of which we have quite a few. We mentioned the many, many Irish newspapers that we have. The nice thing about the ethnic, if you will, Hispanic language, African American, these specialty newspapers will give more information about that person that might not appear in the other paper because they know the reader is interested. And so, for example, an Irish newspaper will say the name of the town back in the old country, or will say more than born in Ireland, but it'll say born in County Monaghan, as in this first reference here, because they know the reader would remember that county or would know that town, or maybe give a little fact about the family, etc. Also notice that just because the language of the newspaper was Spanish doesn't mean you're not going to need it, because the readership is going to be everybody in the community. And so here's a case where the wife of the Honorable T. Rusk has died, and the date she died, and you say to yourself, why are they publishing that in the Spanish newspaper? Well, perhaps there was an interaction, perhaps they're just reporting all deaths in the community. I don't know. But you don't want to discount it just because it's in Spanish. You want to track down every lead and see what you can find. And it should be easy for you to get translation by using Google or call upon somebody at the local high school, etc. So branching out beyond births, marriages, and deaths, you do get the family reunions. Newspapers love to report on family reunions. These were news. When the Marsh family showed up in town, or the Rhea family, or the Stewart family, this was a big deal. And in this case, in Decatur, Illinois, the family showed up, the descendants of Jacob Garver of Switzerland. So this dense paragraph gives so much information. And they always follow the same formula. Hey, what is this family doing here? Why our town? Oh, they were original pioneers here. Oh, where'd they come from? Who's the oldest person attending the reunion? Oh, any famous relatives? Any favorite recipe? Who's the youngest person at the event? And they would go on and talk about it. This can be a terrific source of family insights that you just aren't going to get because not every memory, every tradition, every story was passed down in the family. Sometimes the family reunion is a little bit different. Families are trying to get reunited, and they're publishing a little notice to try and find their family member. This was common in a newspaper in Honolulu, where people would publish notices looking for sailors. And so many people from New England or all across the country, they left town and they were going to go on a ship and find themselves around the world. And so James Marston did that from Hampton, New Hampshire. The family published this notice. He had left home when he was about 25 back in 1853. He'd now be 50 or 60 years old. He was on the following ships, probably based on letters or things the family had heard. He left from New Bedford. He was with the following named people. Hey, if you can get a hold of us, please write to, and it's typically to a minister, to a mother, to a sister, and no doubt the family was just trying to be back in touch. Sometimes it was the sailor trying to get back in touch with the family. This was a gripping story in my book. This person was born in Albany. He lost contact with his family back in 1841. He listed, here's what I know about my dad, my mom. They were French background. They lived here in Albany, maybe French-Canadian, I don't know, but gives the details on the mother and the father. Mother's from Nova Scotia. Can anybody help me find them? That's just gripping. You just really want to drop everything and help. But this is how they did it back in the early 1800s, in this case 1879. So what a showstopper that would be if you found a note by a relative saying, hey, I've really lost touch with the family. Can somebody help me find them? And it was typical, again, reference to the Irish Americans, typical in an Irish newspaper where they would publish, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so that came from Ireland, and you'd get the details all the time. Again, because it is an Irish newspaper, they would give the details. hey, he left from Carrickkallen, I guess, in Ireland in 1891. Last heard from 5 years ago. Worked in a streetcar in New York. Mother's maiden name, sister's names, brothers. And by the way, the person publishing the ad in the New York City newspaper was living in Butte, Montana. So you could see that an Irish newspaper circulated way beyond, say, the local paper. So it's not like a paper that was focused just on a market within, say 100 miles, 50 miles. This newspaper really aimed at an Irish American audience all over the country and beyond. Here's one where the person supposedly went to Texas and gave the details. Another one was looking for a family that was up in Canada. So you could see how this stretched, and there was only so many Irish newspapers, people would subscribe to them to be in touch and to get back in touch. Very poignant, very gripping. And here was an article published by a family looking for their grandmother that started walking when she was 65 and now they'd lost track. No, that's not, but I threw that in just for fun. And I love this picture. Other ads might be a little sterner stuff. You had an apprentice, he ran away, and bang, I want for 3 cents, I want him back, and oh, by the way, he's a no good, and you're cautioned never to trust this person again. I mean, really gripping, harsh kind of things, which is why indentured servants have such a poor estimation in the public imagination. But this was the standard way you got training. This was like the trade school of the day, and hopefully worked out successfully for most of the people involved. You also get the runaway slave kind of ads, much more gripping, poignant. One of the things that quickly leaps out at you in these slaves are everybody had a name. And you often get that myth out there that they had no names or something like this. They had a name. And so you just start to piece these things together. Very, very difficult. It is going to be through newspapers that people do reattach families. As we're using these resources now, some sources that would have thought to be a family history that was impenetrable, they're now piecing together the parts, a line here, a line there. Gripping stuff, gripping stuff. Military records come in all shapes and sizes. Yes, there are thousands, millions of articles about wars and the battles. So if you know your guy fought in a specific battle, you can find the battle. You get the maps, you get the details. But there's also details on the deaths in the military, and not always during a war. Sometimes the deaths were because the Spanish flu was coming through or some other illness that just sort of swept through a camp. And here was information about various camps and the people that died, their next of kin, names of the funeral homes. So a lot of clues there beyond obituaries. This was just in the normal content of the paper. So you do want to track down every reference to your surname. In this case, it's a pension granted for the Revolutionary War in 1887. You say 1887, Revolutionary War. It's, yep, this is probably the last of the Revolutionary War pensions that was granted. And of course, it was to a young girl that married somebody who had served, but then she became entitled to a pension. Just by way of trivia, the last pensions of the Civil War were granted at about midnight as the last act of President Eisenhower because it was so intensely controversial. You know how the presidents sign those bills at midnight just before they leave office because they don't want to face the controversy, and he gave pensions to the widows of Confederate veterans, and there were people who were adamant, we're not going to give those people a dime, you know, that kind of thing. But they came in all shapes and sizes. There's the draft lists, which in effect become censuses of men. This was a front page story in Oklahoma, and you can see that for Noble County, they listed all the men and listed them in the draft. But with draft lists come slacker lists, and so they published in the paper people who did not show up for military service as a way of shaming them into getting with the program. Or in this case, it was too late to get with the program, so we just wanted to shame them anyway, you know, so they published a slacker list in the Trenton Evening Times in New Jersey. In this case, it's get-togethers, military reunions, just like a family reunion. And they're going to relive the stories. They're going to talk about what happened. Typically, these reunions happen annually or more, even more often sometimes as the years marched on. And they would tell about the soldiers lost. And so you want to comb through those things, even though they may have been long after your person died. Do I hear you're
Yes.
trying to reach me? Go, Sina.
We have a few more people that have asked about how do I do the searches. Some people, they've said that they've had a subscription a long time. Okay, we've got about 8 minutes left. We've got about 8 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
And here's an article about the Revolutionary War. And I love it when they talk about the service people that died and give the details. And I found this one the other day by Isaac Bassett, where he had attested to his part of the service in the Revolutionary War. And one of the things he talked about was when General Putnam ordered them not to fire till we have it sort of as a common reference, don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes, but it was rendered then until you could see the color of their eyes, and to make sure you hit them, you know, this kind of thing. So great stuff. That would be a gripping nugget to find for your family. Passenger lists we spoke about, but these appear in the paper, and when they appear in an Irish paper, as this one did, it again is going to tell you where in Ireland they came from. That's the Shamrock, the New York City Irish paper, an 1816 paper. So this is prior to federal passenger lists, so keep an eye on that. There are more passenger lists in newspapers than they're just not available in the federal system because these were done by the local newspapers and they're separate. So you can get a lot of information that just aren't in the conventional place you'll find a passenger list. Photographs, biographies, plenty of great things. I'm going to push through it because I know you want to get to the search tips. Why don't we just forge ahead? Tips, searching. Team, what you want to do is search with less. The biggest mistake that I find people make is they see the search box and they say, I'm going to fill it up with everything I know. Here's his first name, here's his middle name, here's his last name, here's every keyword I can think about that applied to his life, here's the date range, or better yet, people will check this other button for date, and they'll put in the date that guy died because they want to get his obituary. And that's just guaranteed they aren't going to get any hits, any search results. Now, once you've been doing this for any length of time, you know that that's not how you search, because this is going to search and find every word you include has to be in the article. So you want to say to yourself, well, let me step back here. You're going to operate from the basic rule of thumb. I know the article's there, so why am I not finding it? Okay. So put in less. I love to search with just a surname. Now, if it's Smith, Jones, Miller, Brown, that's not how you want to do it. So you pick the word in the surname, the first name, last name, that are the most unusual, and search with those. Maybe it's the name of the town they were from. And so you try to be flexible and anticipate what the publisher would have included in the paper. So you also can click, as you go on our front page, click on the section that applies to your family. So you can go right to birth records and say, I only want birth records. And so in this case, if you plugged in, you're on the search by clicking that birth records section, put in the last name, put in 1875. Hey, I only got 2. Looks like the same 2, but in different papers. And you click, bang, there it is. It comes right up. And it's brief, but it is the birth announcement you were looking for. So it could save you a lot of time. Or you're going to click on the section just for the marriages. And you put in there and you say, I know that Kimball married a Colby, and they married in 1817. So you could try specifics or leave out the year. So if you say, oh, I didn't quite get it, maybe they were married in December of 1817, So it didn't appear until the 1818 newspaper. So leave the year off or something. But by putting them both in, bang, I came up with some. You would see that this is their marriage appearing in newspapers in multiple states, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, etc. So this is great stuff. And but if I had limited it to just a specific newspaper or a specific state, I might have missed it. Same for, you can click in on just obituaries. And so in this case, Ebenezer Hughes. And I'm not sure when he died, but he disappeared from the census in those 10 years. So I do this, and bang, up comes his obituary, and Ebenezer Hughes died. And notice you get the little snippet of the newspaper. This is something you can actually search and not even be a member of Genealogy Bank. You'll get this much of the text, so you get a quick peek. And ditto, you can come in and search just passenger lists. And in this case, again, an Irish example. That's so small, I'm not sure I can read it at this point, but his last name is Stone. He came from Kilkenny, Ireland. We think he came in about that time period. So let's search the passenger lists. And there he is, David Stone, right there in the middle from Kilkenny, and he was heading to Peoria, Illinois. I mean, that just, if you're an Irish-American researcher, that just blows you away at that point because you just don't expect to find it. Came on the steamer Catalonia, February. That's going to be the 15th, I expect. But you'd look it up in the newspaper, you'd see it in context. And that's just one ship that day, and the page is full of them. There's probably 20, 30 ships a day listed on just that one page, and the next page will have 30 more. And just an incredible newspaper to find this all in. So you want to try this, just the surname, add the first name, add the year, try an abbreviation. Is it William? Did they call him William W.M.? Did they call him Bill? Did they just call him Mr. Johnson? Did they just call him Johnson? And so you have to play with it. You have to be flexible, because here's an example where that day they decided to call all the Williams W.M. So if you put in saying, I know his name was William Byrne, it was definitely William Byrne, and I'm insisting on putting that in the index, you're not going to get him. And so you need to be flexible. And that, to me, is the biggest stumbling block of the newbie trying it out. So be flexible. Another practical tip I want to give you is pick a name that's the unusual one in the person's name. If his first name is Durwood, that doesn't come up a lot. And so if you searched on a first name Durwood, then you're getting all the Durwoods, and you could qualify it. And you say, well, gee, when I put in his last name in Durwood, I didn't find him. So let me try just on Durwood. Maybe I'm going to give it a date range. Let me see. Maybe I'm searching in a specific newspaper. And you see how that works for you. But you've got 1.3 billion articles, and you're trying to coax it. The obvious search didn't work. So you're going to have to use some backup and flexible searches to see why the computer couldn't read it. And remember that when you do read these things, the computer can have a tough time. You can read this easily. So newspaper editors had no problem leaving letters out, misspelling words, using alternate characters and fonts, letters, pieces of type. As I said earlier, I used to set type, and you just know what letters you can flip around and how you can turn them upside down, or what you can just plain leave out. Or maybe they wanted the columns on the page to look more elegant, and they added extra leading, and so they've, stretched out that sentence. Well, all of a sudden the computer thinks those are separate words, and they no longer see it as a whole word. But you can see it, and you can see it carefully. But think of that poor computer that can't. We're training our computer to do that, just as we trained it to do the colonial period S that looked like an F, or little characters like that. And you get newspapers where the characters have an old-fashioned font, and so we train the computer to see the various fonts. And we know all the fonts that have existed in newspapers over the centuries. And so we work with it. We just never had this level of access before. And we want to make sure you do sign up and join with us in this great work at Genealogy Bank, because we have lots more to do, and there's a great offer. Go ahead and let's sing out with more questions, but we've used our time. But I can stay as long as you like and continue to answer questions for you right now.
And I will flip over right now to my computer. Hold on, I will try to do that. Can you use wildcards?
Yes, Boolean operators are there, and so feel free to use them, and that works out handy. But just remember, what you ask is what you get, and so be careful what you ask for.
Okay. For those of you who would like a special offer to join Genealogy Bank, you can go to this web address and it will take you there. It's simple. It's genealogybank.com, and then you add the 1301OH. You can also go to our website, and when you go to Community and you click on Links, and I will show you how to do that right here. You go to Community, you click on Links, and when you get to this page, scroll down to Genealogy Bank, and there's your Genealogy Bank special offer. We have some people that are saying thank you. We've taken care of the wildcards. Hopefully, we've had a lot of people sharing remarkable experiences of things that they have found on Genealogy Bank. People whose parents died young and they found all sorts of information through the newspapers. Can they use the images from Genealogy Bank, or can they download the articles and then use them elsewhere, like on a blog? It would be their personal thing. Can they share either the images or the articles that way?
What you need to do, and the answer is generally yes, but with a huge caution. We provide the service, but as I said very early on, we do it in strict cooperation with the publisher. Some have granted carte blanche in terms of your being able to copy and use it. Others have not. And so you need to ask us. If it is simply for your own personal use, you're going to tuck it into your copy of your software, Roots Magic, Legacy, PAF, what have you. Terrific. If you plan to put it on a blog, probably you'll get permission to do that. But let's say you were putting up on your blog every obituary that appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer for 1880. That would be frowned on, because then it would be, in effect, replicating Genealogy Bank elsewhere. A quick email to us, bang, we can get you an answer. Just tell us why you need it, what you're going to do. But I can tell you that if the question is, can I download and save the article for me? Yes. Can I put it in my genealogy software so that when I print out the book and I give a copy to my mom and I give a copy to my sister and to my kids? Yes, yes, yes. But if the answer is I'm publishing a book and this is used as an illustration, just get permission. I don't think I've ever seen a request that wasn't granted, but you need to have asked, because we have over 6,500 newspapers and we do not own the copyright to everything for redistribution, which is what you're doing. And so you need to just ask, and we'll get you the answer very promptly. What else would you like to know?
Well, some people, I haven't seen any newer questions. Is there a place on your website that gives those same hints, and additional hints if they're available, on how to search to try and find their people? Is there a place on the website for that kind of help?
Yes. I guess you want to switch it back to me for a second?
I'll switch it back.
And I'll pull up, and I'm pulling up Genealogy Bank as we speak so you can see it. Right up here they have something in the corner called the Learning Center. Just click in there, or you can click under Help. But the nice thing about the Learning Center is it's got every article we've written for the past 7 or 8 years, depending on how long the blog or the newsletter has been in existence. But looking at the newsletter, for example, you'll see by clicking there, articles of the newsletter go back to 1910. They're packed with examples, packed with search tips, just as the blog is, and the blog goes back even farther back. So absolutely you want to use it. You click on it, and for example, here today's article was on using German American newspapers. And so there's things that specialize, or there's just the generic search tip, but it's all in there. And you may have noticed that in the, I'm going to come back to the, well, can I? The PowerPoint in this offer, just so you can see it. Notice that there's a free ebook that comes with this, which gives many of the examples I gave you tonight, but it gives you in-depth searching, in this case for obituaries. But some of the tips are very applicable across the board, and we have a whole suite of ebooks that you can get to help you, as well as online help screens. You can always write us, call us on the phone. Here's the phone number. We're happy to help at any time.
And
Other questions?
Yes. What about downloading newspaper images in a larger file than on a more reasonable size than originally found?
Just watch and see that when you go to download something, and I'll just do a generic search for you here. Hopefully, bang, bang, it comes up real quick. But you'll notice that when the I'm of an age now where I can't do two things at once, like talk and do something, so bear with me as I click through this. But you'll notice that when the screen comes up, bang, there's the article, and there's a little icon that says PDF. And you can click on that, and oh, Kemp is arrested. That's wonderful. But let's see if that isn't an interesting article. But when it comes up, and you'll see that there's a little corner there, there's an icon for PDF. There's also a way that you can cut out just the article and have that appear. So you can be as, in this case, you see how the article comes up, and it's just the article. It highlights the words that you search, in this case the word Kemp, and you can say, okay, I'll keep just the article. Now some people think, hey, that's all you have is articles. But no, there's the entire page there. You can list all the page. You can go here, and that little icon is supposed to represent the whole page. And so you can click on that, and this will magically change to the entire page. Or you could click on the PDF icon. Now that I've given competing commands, let's see which one it responds to first. And you can pull up and save as a PDF just the article. And you could say, well, gee, that's going to be a very long article. Then you can cut it and save it. I use Picasa. I find that really handy. But you can save it, you can print it, you can work with it. I have found that even with my tired eyes, the full page, in this case, of a newspaper is very viewable on an 8.5 by 11 printout. So I like to save the newspaper. And maybe if you have a real catchy, maybe this is just the best article you ever had about your family, print it off as a larger thing, frame it, hang it on the wall. That's fair use. Go for it. It's just hanging in your den, not a problem. And maybe you want to hang up a picture of the Titanic sinking, or Lincoln was shot, or events in history. That's fine, as long as you're hanging them in the den, and it's not for redistribution. But you can do some wonderful things with this. So that's how, and notice here, I'm in the PDF, so come back to the page. If you notice here in the icons, you can also go in and pull out just a part of the page and do it that way. You can cut, you can parse it, and so that you can get it, because sometimes the page might feel overwhelming, but you can just take parts of it. Again, I use Picasa, free from Google. I find that more than sufficient for what I do, and I think you'll find that's pretty nifty. Other questions?
Somebody asked, I think referring back to your ability to share articles with other people and getting permission, they also asked about does that go for sharing it on their Ancestry account with where they have their tree?
Again, they need to ask for permission because that's redistribution. You've now put it online on another site. So it applies to your blog, it applies to whether you put it on Ancestry, etc. Ask for permission, and then you'll know, because there's some newspapers we can give you permission, others we can't.
And I think the last question that we can address right now, is there any cooperation or joint venture planned with Ancestry.com?
They're separate companies.
Maybe you can't even say.
Oh, I can easily say they're separate companies, and they do their thing and we do ours. There's no, just like there is no cooperation, so to speak. There's great cordiality. I think the world of Ancestry, if I was giving other lectures, you'd see that I ask people to use the site and to go there. There's no sense of competition of any kind. And so they're not doing what we do, and vice versa. So that's we wish them well and encourage everybody to use that site.
Well,
I will add, just as a quick postscript, sometimes the question is asked, well, hey, if I've got Ancestry, they've got newspapers, what do I need you for? The Ancestry site has, according to their website, 1,100 newspapers and various stages of those newspapers. Some they have just the obituaries or what have you, and we have 6,500 newspapers, and 95% of our newspapers do not exist on any other site. So while Newspaper Archives, another company, or Ancestry may have newspapers, they don't have the newspapers we have, and vice versa. There's 5% of our newspapers appear elsewhere. So you wind up having to, if you want to use those newspapers, that's great, knock yourself out, but you still need to use our newspapers to get the papers that you need. And so just like so many things in life, you'll need to go to multiple sites. And we're the largest site out there, and for newspapers, and have more African American, more Hispanic newspapers, more this, more that. It's just a great day, and they have terrific sites as well. They're great services, but this is where you'll get the newspapers. Other questions?
If they already have a subscription, can they get the free ebook
They
that
can
you're
renew.
offering?
They are happy to have them extend their membership and get that as well. So they get not only the bargain price, but they get the ebook as well.
Very good. I think we're done for tonight. We've had people, the majority have stuck with us, even going beyond the time. We are very appreciative of their attendance. We are mostly appreciative of your coming to teach us tonight. It was a great class. It's wonderful to see all of the different kinds of newspaper articles that can help us in this wonderful quest of family history. So we appreciate your coming. For those of you who asked questions that we couldn't get to, I'm very sorry about that, and I do hope that, because they were more individualized questions, I hope that when you contact Genealogy Bank by email or by phone call, that they will be able to answer those specific questions for you. Thank you for joining.
Let me just quickly add, if you'll go to Facebook right now to our Genealogy Bank page and fire your question, I'll get you an answer tonight.
Terrific. Even better. So thank you so much, and unless there's anything else you need to say, Tom?
All set, and thank you very much.
Thank you. We will call it a good night. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.